Are you looking for a fun, unique blanket to make? Then you've come to the right place. I'm Little John Yarns, and today we're making a pattern by Red Heart called the Beach Time Hexagon Blanket. This is a 6-sided blanket worked using the puff stitch. Make sure you go over to redheart.com and download the free pattern to follow along to this tutorial. Let's hop into the pattern breakdown. The pattern is worked from the center outwards, with increases happening only at one of the 6 corners. Then we'll work on the border using the large and small shells. The materials we are using today are Red Heart Baby Soft. You'll need 5 skeins of yarn total. If you're following along to this color scheme, I provided the name and balls amounts for each colors. As usual, I provided timestamps for this tutorial for easy pattern navigation. Alright, let's hop into it. Before we start this pattern, make sure you go over to redheart.com and download the written pattern so you can follow along to this tutorial. To begin, we're going to start by chaining 6. So we'll start with our slip knot. And we're going to chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And now we're going to slip stitch the join into the very first single crochet, not single crochet, but very first chain to form a ring. All right, now that we have a ring done, we're going to start by doing a beginning puff. To do that, you're going to lift up your hook about 1/4 inch, and we're going to yarn over and go into this ring 3 times. So we yarned over, go in once, pull up a loop. That's 1. Yarn over, go into the stitch, pull up a loop. That's 2. Yarn over, go into the ring, pull up a loop, and that's 3. You should have a total of 7 loops on your hook. And now we're just going to yarn over and pull through all 7 loops on your hook. And that's how you do a beginning puff. So next, we're going to chain 2. 1, 2. We're going to put 5 more regular puffs into this ring. I'll show you how to do a regular puff. To do that is very similar to the beginning puff. We're going to yarn over and go into the ring 3 times to do our puff. So yarn over, into the ring, pull up a loop. That's 1. Yarn over, go into the ring, pull up a loop. That's 2. Yarn over, go into the ring, pull up a loop, and that's 3. You'll have 7 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through all 7, and chain 2. I'll show you one more time. So yarn over, go into the loop 3 times. So this is 1, yarn over, pull up a loop, 2, yarn over, pull up a loop, and 3. You'll have your 7 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all 7, and chain 2. All right, so you can pause your video here. I want you to repeat that sequence all the way around until you have a total of 6 puffs. So you have 1, 2, 3. You'll do it 3 more times. So pause your video here, and I'll meet you at the other side. We've made it back around, and don't forget to put in your last chain 2 for the end of the row. And you should have a total of 6 puffs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now we're just going to slip stitch the join into the very first puff stitch. You see the space right here? If I pull on the first puff, you'll see it kind of tent up. That's where we're going to slip stitch the join. Okay, now we're ready to start row 2. We're going to slip stitch over into the chain 2 space to get in our starting position for this row. All right, in this space, we're going to pull your stitch up just a little bit, and we're going to do a beginning puff stitch. So remember, we're going to go in 3 times. 1, 2, and 3. Yarn over and pull through all 7 loops on your hook. And now we're going to chain 2. Because this is called a puff V-stitch, we're placing 2 into the very same chain 2 space. So we're just going to go right back into that chain, right back into that chain 2 space. So going once, twice, 3 times. Yarn over, pull through all 7 loops on your hook. And that is your puff V-stitch. So in between, we're just going to chain 1 between your puff V stitches, and we're going to put another puff V stitch in the previous row, chain 2. So yarn over, going 3 times. 1, 2, 3, yarn over, pull through all 7 loops on your hook. Chain 2, 1, 2, and let's complete that puff V stitch. We're going back into the very same chain 2 space. 1, back in, 2, back in, and 3. Yarn over, pull through all 7 loops on your hook, and chain 1. That is going to be our pattern repeat all the way around. We're going to place a V stitch in each one of the chain 2 spaces, and in between those, you'll place a chain 1. So if that doesn't make sense, it'll be puff stitch, chain 2, puff stitch, a chain 1 in between, puff stitch, chain 2, puff stitch, a chain 1 in between. We're going to do that all the way around, and I'll meet you back at the other side. So pause your video here. We've made it back around, and don't forget that put that last chain 1 stitch in there. So if you're looking at it, you should have a total of 6 puff V stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And we're going to slip stitch to join into the very first puff stitch. So remember, if I pull it up, you kind of see it tint. We're going to slip stitch to join there. All right, and now we're going to slip stitch over into the chain 2 space to getting our starting position. All right, I know you see the patterns kind of round. From here on out, I want you to think of your puff V stitches as corners, because that's what they'll be as you build up on your blanket. So let's begin by making a beginning puff V stitch. So remember, pull your loop up a little bit, yarn over, go into that chain 2 space 3 times. 1, 2, 3, yarn over, pull through all 7 loops, and chain 2, 1, 2. Let's go back and complete that puff V stitch back into the very same stitch 3 times. 1, 2, 3, yarn over, pull through all 7 loops on your hook, and chain 1. As you can see, now we're going to be at the chain 1 space. Your chain 1 spaces, think of those as your sides. So you'll always put just a regular puff stitch into your chain 1 spaces. And in all of your puff V stitches, you'll put a V stitch. So let me show you your next stitch in a chain 1. We're going to place 1 puff stitch. Go in 3 times. 1, 2, and 3. Yarn over, pull through all your loops on your hook, and chain 1. All right, we've made it to your chain 2 space. Remember, this is your corner, so you're going to place a puff V stitch into this corner. So yarn over, let's go in 3 times. 1, 2, 3, yarn over, pull through all 7 loops on your hook, chain 2, 1, 2. Let's do the second half of our puff V stitch. Let's go back into that very same stitch. 1, 2, and 3. Yarn over, pull through all your loops on a hook, and chain 1. We made it back to your chain 1 space, and remember, your chain 1 space will be considered your side. So therefore, we're going to put 1 stitch in it. Let's do a puff. 1, 2, and 3. Yarn over, pull through all 7 loops on your hook, and chain 1. That is going to be your pattern repeat all the way around. So how it looks is puff V stitch, puff, V stitch, puff, V stitch, puff, V stitch, puff. Remember, we're going to place a V stitch in each chain 2 space and a singular puff in each chain 1 space. So pause your video here, continue with that sequence all the way around, and I will meet you back at the other side. Okay, we've made it back around, and once again, don't forget to do that last chain 1. We're going to slip stitch a join into that very first puff stitch. and slip stitch over into that chain 2 space to get in starting position. From your previous row, you should have a total of 6 V-stitches and a total of, I believe, 12 chain 1 spaces. Throughout this pattern, you will always keep 6 V-stitches as you build up, because those will be the 6 corners of your pattern. So according to the written pattern, you're just going to repeat round 3 until you hit 29 rows. But I'm going to demonstrate round 4 for you, just so you can make sure you get the drift of everything. So remember, we're going to put a puff V-stitch in each previous row's puff V-stitch, and we're going to place 1 puff in each chain 1 stitch all the way around. So let's begin our beginning puff V-stitch. Pull up your loop, yarn over, go in 3 times. 1, 2, 3, yarn over, pull through all 7 loops, chain 2, 1, 2. Let's do the second half of that puff V-stitch, back into the same stitch, 1, 2, oops, and 3. Yarn over, pull through all 7 loops, and chain 1. And now we're back to your chain 1 stitch. Remember, your chain 1 is your side. We just did a corner, so let's do your side. 1 singular puff in your chain 1 stitch. 1, 2, 3, yarn over, pull through all 7 loops, and chain 1. All right, we have another chain 1 stitch, so this is still considered your side. So yarn over, go into that 3 times. 1, 2, and 3. Yarn over, pull through all 7 loops, and chain 1. Now look, we're on the previous row's puff V-stitch, so this is your corner. So let's place another corner in the previous row's corner. So go in 3 times. 1, I'm moving a little bit faster. 2, and 3. Chain 2, 1, 2, back into the same stitch. 1, 2, and 3. Yarn over, pull through all your loops, and chain 1. So that is your corner. We're going to repeat that pattern sequence all the way around. So that is 1 puff stitch in each chain 1 space, followed by a puff V-stitch in your corner. Puff stitch in each chain 1 space, puff V-stitch in your corner. Puff stitch in each chain 1 space, puff stitch in the corner. So pause your video here, and I'll meet you at the completion of this row. Okay, we've made it back around, and at the end of this, you should have a total of 6 puff V-stitches, because that number will never change, and a total of 18 chain 1 spaces. So we're just going to slip stitch to join into that very first puff stitch. All right, and we're just going to repeat this same sequence until you have a total of 29 rows. Let me give you a better angle of this. As you can see, we're going to place a V-stitch in each previous row's V-stitch and place 1 puff in each chain 1 space. So V-stitch in a V-stitch and a puff in each chain 1 space. As you can see, it's starting to form a hexagon. As you can see, here's the corners, corner, and corner. That's a total of 6, so those will always be your puff V-stitches. Okay, and if you want to follow along to the color sequence, on the very next scene, I'm going to list the colors so you can follow along to the colors of this pattern. If you would like to follow along to this color sequence, make sure you pause your video here. I listed the colors and a number of rounds for each color, so make sure you check that out, finish your rows, and I'll meet you at the border. Okay, we're going to begin working on the edging of our blanket. You're going to attach your new yarn to any one of your chain 2 spaces. Those are your corner stitches. So once you have your yarn attached, we're going to begin by working a large shell into the corner of your work. Large shells will always go into the chain 2 spaces. So to begin, we're going to start by chaining 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Your chain 4 counts as your first double crochet and chain 1. Next, we're going to double crochet back into this very same space. And now we're going to chain 1, double crochet 3 times into the same space. Once again, we're going to chain 1, double crochet 3 times into this space. So chain 1, double crochet. That's 1. Chain 1, double crochet. That's 2. Chain 1, double crochet. And that's 3. This is considered your very first large shell that's made. So next, we are going to chain 1. We'll always chain 1 between your spaces and single crochet into the very next chain 1 space. And we're going to chain 1 again. And we're going to, my camera move. It keeps slowly moving. Sorry, guys. And now we're going to place a small shell into the very next stitch. I'll show you how to work the small shell. First, we're just going to double crochet into the very next chain 1 space. Now we're going to chain 1, double crochet 2 times. That's a chain 1, double crochet 2 times. So chain 1, double crochet. That's 1. Chain 1, double crochet. That's 2. That's considered your very first shell. So now, like we did before, we're going to chain 1 and single crochet into the very next stitch. Now we're going to chain 1 again, and we're going to work a small shell into the very next stitch. Remember, your small shells will always go into your chain 1 sides. So to do that, remember, double crochet. And now we're going to chain 1, double crochet 2 times. So chain 1, double crochet. That's 1. Chain 1, double crochet. And that is 2. And that is considered your small shell. And once again, we are going to chain 1, because we always chain 1 in between our spaces, single crochet into the next chain 1 space. And that's how you create your small shells. I'm going to show you how to work your big shell one more time. All right, to work your big puff, because we are in the corner of our work, your blanket will be different, but right now I'm in the corner of my work. So we're going to place a double crochet. Now we're going to chain 1, double crochet 4 times. So chain 1, double crochet. That's 1. Chain 1, double crochet. That's 2. Chain 1, double crochet. That's 3. Chain 1, double crochet. That's 4. So that, oops, my camera moved again. I'm sorry. It's getting wobbly. I need a new tripod. So that is your very first, not your very first, your very second large shell. And remember, we chain 1 in between. Did I chain 1? I did not. Chain 1 and single crochet into the very next chain 1 space. And you'll continue placing all your small shells in your chain 1 spaces, and you'll work your large shells in your chain 2 spaces. Just in case you're not sure, you might get lost, make sure you're following along to the written pattern so you won't get confused on your border. All right, I'm going to show you what everything looks like completely done. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and check out my other crochet blankets. All right, guys, I'll see you all on the very next tutorial.